Good afternoon, everybody. Um, so I have the privilege of running the IBM Public Service, which is our federal and state and local government blockchain. So, as I like to say, my 25 years of temporary residency in the Washington, D.C. area have finally paid off with the coolest job ever. I'd like to really thank the Chamber. I'd like to thank Perry Ann and Amy. Um, this is my third year at the conference. I really get a lot of this conference. I clear my calendar and I really stay for all the sessions. So I just want to thank all the previous speakers and all the information that we've gotten. My calendar tomorrow is going to be terrible, but it'll be well worth it. So what I wanted to talk to you about was a little bit about how government is leveraging blockchain and really give you a little bit of a checkpoint as to where to go. So kind of polling a few folks about what they'd be interested in. There was kind of three topics that I thought you'd want to hear about. So one, where is government? Where is government using blockchain today? Where is that happening? Two, we've heard throughout this whole conference the discussion about acceleration, right? And so what are some of the things that might help accelerate government adoption of this capability? And then third, kind of where do we go next? So let's start with kind of where government is today. So there was a couple times there was a timeline referenced of where blockchain has been. I think government is actually about a year off that timeline. That's not surprising. Sometimes, government really waits to see where some of the technology and capabilities are. But in my view, 2017 was kind of the education, was kind of the time to start to think about that. And I was actually sitting right about there, right, at this conference, right, trying to understand and how to take some of these concepts to our government clients. 2018 was really the time of proof of concepts. And this is where I want you to think about that maybe everything you don't read in the press is accurate about where federal and state and local government is with blockchain. So if you read some of the articles, you look at some of the research, I think it grossly understates the amount of work that's been done around government and blockchain. So looking at what we've done in the last year at IBM, looking at what some of my compatriots have been doing in industry, I think there's been well over 100 proof of concepts done in government over the last year. There really is a lot of interest. The reason you're not seeing it is because not all those were actual procurements that went through and were put out into the press. Often those are being done on existing projects, or those are being done with investment from industry looking into this capability. So what I'm really excited about is in 2019, we've really seen some of those proof of concepts move into what I call production pilots. And the word production means a lot in government, right? But production means real production data driving real results. So I wanted to spend a minute talking about one of those projects that I'm familiar with. So first off, how many folks have companies that are registered in the state of Delaware? Okay, and half the people that didn't raise your hand, your companies are, and you just don't know it. Okay, Delaware has a huge history of interaction with corporations around both the initial registration and then ongoing processes. So I've been working with the Secretary of State's office in Delaware over this past year, doing some incredible things that do involve blockchain. And that journey started with some prioritization of what would be valuable for that business network. So if hopefully some of you got to go see my blockchain all-stars, Sean, Ann, and Luke, over in the display area, got to see a demo of that capability. But if you didn't, think about the overall business network in Delaware. You have the corporations, you have the state of Delaware, you have registered agents, you have legal firms. And they're all working together to make sure that corporations have the best capabilities experience, right, in being registered in Delaware. So that process started really by prioritizing across that business network where was the value, okay? And that's a key element there. They didn't rush into, let's just do a blockchain proof of concept or a blockchain pilot. Where is that value that needed to be established? And then using something we call design thinking, right, we turn that into a set of use cases that actually they went through. And they didn't just complete one, but they completed 2 proof of concepts this summer, okay? And I'm happy to tell you today that those proof of concepts are now are moving into production. So we're going to be moving into production for a project in Delaware around corporate stock authorization and issuance. So a little bit of the make it real. If you go see one of my blockchain all-stars back there at the end of the session and scan this query code, if you are a company in Delaware, you can participate in this pilot, okay? Now, hopefully you're a private company in Delaware, not IBM, because IBM, we're probably not ready for the IBM-sized companies yet, but this is really exciting. This is real. And this is not the only production pilot that's going on in government, right? There's other projects that are moved forward to this point. So this is really exciting. So my view is that Delaware is one example, but that we are really moved past that, kind of POC, and we'll be moving into those production pilots. So the next point is, well, great. How do we accelerate it? How do we get it to move faster? I mean, we've heard throughout the last 2 days, right? There seems to be some real challenges around this capability. And what I would say in government is there's a couple of very specific challenges in government that I think would help accelerate. So the first thing is overall secure hosting of blockchain infrastructure, okay? So for any of the Guppies out there, you have specific security requirements around running and holding government data. FedRAMP, FISMA, right? Authorities to operate. So this is a big challenge. A lot of the customers and clients I talk to in government say, well, I don't want to be the first one that goes through all that infrastructure, paying to go get that done. So 2 pieces of good news there. As of December of last year, Health and Human Services, HHS, has a authority to operate blockchain on Hyperledger Fabric. Okay, so that is huge. There's an actual authority to operate that's been established in civilian government for that. And then secondly, I'm not sure if I see Sherry Sokol out there somewhere, but I'm sure she's out there. DISA, Defense Information Systems Agency, is now looking at blockchain as a service for the Department of Defense. So if they provide that capability, right, we can go to Department of Defense mission partners and say, here's a capability where you can focus on the business value and not have to focus on the infrastructure, right? And there's a DoD organization that is taking the mantle of running that secure blockchain infrastructure, again, off Hyperledger Fabric. So that is huge to be able to then say, no, that's not a barrier anymore. So I see both those initiatives really driving that forward. Another area is, well, I don't know how this kind of technology works. So there's a number of commercial blockchains out there. Food safety, supply chain, electronic health records. And don't take my word for it. You can listen to the sessions we've just had the past 2 days. Those all came up, right? These are kind of established commercial blockchains that are out there running today. Government participating in those blockchains is going to be another huge accelerator, right? So they don't have to have the lift of necessarily creating a brand new blockchain project. They can actually leverage and interact with that. And we saw some examples last year where there was some proof of concepts run, one run by Customs and Border Protection around integrating with the Walmart commercial blockchain. So those examples are out there where the government entities can learn, and then maybe they learn and understand what's going on in the commercial blockchain, and then they establish their own blockchain capability for their specific business problem. So that's another accelerator. The third area of acceleration is, we've got to protect our Guppies, right? You know how they always say, don't be afraid to fail. Well, a government employee has a little more pressure, right, when it comes to afraid to fail. So we need to make sure that the proof of concepts and pilots that are being recommended, number one, you need blockchain to use them. I will say my number is 4%. If I go talk to a client about blockchain, probably only 4% of the time, 1 out of every 25, is it something that can't be solved with the traditional technology? 2, is it of value to the overall business network? So the example in Delaware was a great example, right? Do you have value to the overall business network, not just to the one agency who's sponsoring the blockchain? And then third, do you have overall value to the network, and do you have that great use case? But you have a government superhero who's willing to go out there and deflect a lot of the things that they're going to have to deal with, like your agency is trying to solve your problem with Bitcoin, right? I mean, that's the Washington Post article that you might get at running one of these projects. So it doesn't surprise me at all that there's a lot of government entities that don't want to talk about what they're doing with blockchain because they're actually making great progress, right? But they don't want to necessarily have to go defend that work across the board. So there's some of those superheroes out there, and I really commend what they've been doing, and we need to continue to support them into next year. So where are we going from here? So the first thing is the Chamber of Digital Commerce, the Congressional Blockchain Caucus, ACT-IAC. These are organizations that have gotten industry and government working together to demystify, to educate, to provide value in talking about blockchain. And what I would tell you is that that has been a critical step. And we all, in industry side, government side, we need to continue to work together to drive that forward. The second thing is there have been requests for information and requests for proposals, RFIs and RFPs if you're in the business, that have come out talking about blockchain. I was so excited in January, several proposals and BAAs and things that are out there, research requests came out actually asking to consider blockchain technology. That's a major step forward. Now in industry, we'd like a few more RFPs and a few less RFIs. If you're in the industry, you know what that means, right? But it's great to see those. We need to have those continue. And then the last thing I'll mention is, it was brought up, I think, a couple times in the sessions. I call it and blockchain, but it's where the project and the initiative is what's important in driving the program, not necessarily blockchain. My number is 40-60, 40% blockchain, 60% user experience, other value, could be AI, could be robotic process automation, could be IoT, could be analytics, right? 60% of the value the business network is getting has nothing to do with blockchain. Blockchain is just a secure, more trusted information that's feeding that up. And so Jerry Como actually came out with a new book. I would really encourage you to read it. It's called Blockchain for Business. Jerry is one of my personal heroes in the blockchain space. I was able to spend some time in San Francisco with him a couple weeks ago. His number is 2080. He says it's 20% blockchain and 80% these other things that are going to come out. So I think more and more it's going to be and blockchain. And so my expectation is that, I think this was mentioned before and I'll reiterate it. You're not going to be talking about blockchain projects. You're going to be talking about projects that are driving value with blockchain feeding in that value. So the last thing I'll say is, there hasn't been a ton of discussion on permission blockchains necessarily in this conference. But, I think it's an important part of what is going on in the blockchain community. And here's one of the most important parts. If you want government entities that are involved in regulation, that are involved in policy, that are involved in legal aspects to be, providing guidance on blockchain, they need to use it. And many of the use cases that are best for government are in the permission blockchain space. So just think about that, right? If you can get a project going on with blockchain, I think it will have personally, in my opinion, I think it'll have an effect on what's going on in the, permissionless and some of the other aspects of blockchain. So appreciate the time. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks.